right, it's Wednesday. This is our midweek edition of the program Frontier Opening Bell. Thank you for joining us on the show. I'm Temple Ashaju. With us on the program this morning to give us some analysis, we've got Ali Kansachu of Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi, Kenya, coming through. Thank you for making it this morning, Ali. Joshua Debisi from Vertiva Capital Management. Appreciate your presence on the show. Hope you serve us some good breakfast. Now let's look at the market indices, the way they settled yesterday. Nigerian Stock Exchange marginally up 0.03% on Tuesday. BRVM Stock Exchange rose 0.89%. The Egyptian Stock Exchange was down 1.15%. Kenya experienced a bit of a gain as well, marginally up 0.02%, while the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, slumped by some 2.14% on Tuesday. Now let's move on to the Eastern African headlines. And here we've got Kenya UK trade pact to allow duty-free imports to Kenya for the next 25 years. Kenya exports leads the Economic African Community intra-trade at 165 billion Kenyan shillings. That's for the third quarter of 2020. Nairobi Stock Exchange completes integration of on system with Refinitiv FICO. BOC gases in Kenya, profit after tax jumps by 88% to 105.2 million shillings on the rise of oxygen demand and of course coronavirus. Ethiopia Central Bank says 82.2 billion birr deposits was mobilized in the first half of 2020 and 2021. Let me come to you, Ali. I'd like to hone in on these headlines here and perhaps give us a sense of what the market looks like yesterday. Why did we have a bit of that marginal gain?
So good morning, Temple, and thank you. You've got some very consequential headlines this morning. Let me first start with the Kenya-UK Trade Pact to allow duty-free imports to Kenya for 25 years. Essentially, this is reciprocal. It is advantageous, I think, for both sides. It speaks to Boris Johnson's government's big drive post-Brexit to engage Commonwealth countries. Kenya and the United Kingdom have a very long-standing relationship at multiple levels, and this was expected, predictable, and predicted. There have been some concerns by some commentators that Kenya might prove a dumping ground for UK goods. Those are very overblown in my view. Kenya has substantial exports into the United Kingdom and has an opportunity to increase that flow under this free trade agreement. So I'm bullish about it, and I think there's been a lot of negative commentary, which is, in my view, unfounded.
Can you quickly, Ali, just to add a question to that? I mean, what does these developments do to the AFCFTA?
So that's an interesting question. I think there was plenty of unhappiness that Kenya was negotiating this agreement without including the overall umbrella of the African Free Trade Agreement. And also there was some unhappiness within the East African community as well, that Kenya was doing what people perceived as a Donald Trump, seeking a bilateral advantage and running roughshod over the multilateral component we've just spoken about. But if you look at this agreement that Kenya's negotiated, it applies for the rest of the East African communities, if they so wish. And I think in the context of the African Free Trade Agreement, it's overcooked. And I think it's for the African Free Trade Agreement negotiators to basically use this as leverage in order to gain the same benefit with the United Kingdom, which is what I think they should be doing. Right. Kenya exports leading East African community into trade at 165 billion. That's a good number. I haven't dived into the component parts of that, but that's a good number. EAC remains the most successful at intra-community trade of all the regional trade combinations that we have on the continent. And notwithstanding a lot of noise that we hear around it, a lot of chest thumping, realignments and what have you, but overall, the technocrats have done a good job in terms of making sure non-tariff barriers are very difficult to put into play, and then dealing away from the politics when there are challenges. So I've got to give Kenya and the community credit for that, because you wouldn't believe it if you listen to some of the commentary that comes out. NSE completes the integration of the bond system with Refinitiv. This is a positive development in line with reforms that the NSE is pursuing under the leadership of the chairman, Kiprona Kitoni, and the CEO. The bond market is looking to integrate itself with international investors. Kenya has outstanding total debt of 7.2 trillion, of which about 3.6 trillion is domestic debt. It's got reasonably good carry and a more stable currency than most countries on the continent, and therefore I think this is a positive development and hopefully will excite more interest amongst investors. BOC Kenya, a temple. Look, they're in the oxygen business. In the COVID emergency, there's been good demand for oxygen. What was interesting about this, there was a takeover offer, which interestingly the board have pushed back on. This is the first time in the history of the Kenyan capital markets that I know of where the board has sought to protect minority shareholder interests. Normally these things go through on the nod. But essentially a good demand, good business in a sweet spot in the pandemic. Sorry, Carbasid knocked back the BOC Kenya offer. So BOC came in with an offer. The Carbasid board said, look, it's not up to scratch, and knocked it back. But you can see BOC doing well. Ethiopia Central Bank, 83.2 billion deposits mobilized. I think that looks like a positive number. I mean, Ethiopia is like a massive opportunity where people are trying to bring under the mattress banking into the formal banking system. Ethiopia Telecom announced that they're going to be bringing a mobile money service in the next few weeks. Safaricom obviously were disappointed that they're being precluded from bringing M-Pesa into Ethiopia. However, we had some other announcements regarding Ethiopia yesterday. IMF is looking for 2% GDP growth this full year. I'm expecting negative GDP growth because of the political uncertainties and the continued problems in Tigray and at the border with Sudan. And I'm thinking that, the genie of regional representation has been let out of the bottle. But interestingly, the IMF confirmed the program that they're putting in place with Ethiopia. And this should be seen in the context of the Europeans rolling back some of the money that they promised. But Ethiopia, big market, 110 million, big opportunity, but lots of political volatility right now.
I appreciate these thoughts, Ali. Thanks a great deal. I mean, I love the deep analysis that you give us about the BOC Kenya profits, and I hope that this profit in Kenya rubs off on BOC, like BOC is listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange as well. Thanks a great deal. Also, in any of those headlines catching your attention, would you like to have a go with?
Good morning. Okay, let me just add up to the BOC gases story in Kenya. The BOC gases of the UK is divesting 61% of their own interest in BOC gases. Nigeria is going on entirely now into Nigeria. They're selling it en bloc into a new set of a new strategic investor in Nigeria. So very soon we'll see BOC gases Nigeria being 100% owned by Nigeria. It's been good business for them with gases in Nigeria, with the NNPC and the National Oil Ministry of Petroleum Resources focusing on gas utilization. Last year, Nigeria has the highest gas penetration in terms of the LPG. For the first time, I think we reached about 1 million cubic feet of LPG, which was used last year. Industrial gases are also becoming a whole lot more common. So BOC gases in Kenya, good business in terms of that. But the BOC gases in Nigeria would also have to do more. They've been dealing more in industrial gases over the years. Maybe this is the time for them to also move into gases that are used in terms of this pandemic as well and all of that. But I think it's still good news if you look at the share price of BOC gases even on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Thank you.
Quickly, Bosun, do you want to have a go as well with the Kenya UK trade tax? Does it bother you as it relates to the AFCFTA implementation?
So I didn't get that.
The Kenya UK trade tax allowing for
the 25-year trade deal.
Exactly. Do you have any concerns on that? I mean, regarding the implementation of the AFCFTA.
Well, 25 years is a lifetime, if you ask me, to allow free duty import from UK to Kenya, while from UK with love. All hail the Queen. What can we say? Long live the Queen. So what do we say? What is the back end to that story? Is Kenya is very, very interested in making deals with Britain post Brexit, by the way. So I guess that's where that goes. But let's see what they'll give the Kenyans in exchange for that.
Great, thanks a great deal. Joshua WC, I'll come with you first with the Western African headlines here. We'll look at Moody's saying that Nigeria has the strongest potential for Islamic financing in sub-Saharan Africa. Zenith Bank earnings also beat expectations yesterday. Our final dividend is at 270 kobo, with the profit of the tax leaping by 10.4%. FMDQ admits Parthian Partners Limited 20 billion naira commercial paper. We got our first international bank in Gambia becoming first Vista Bank in Gambia right now. Cameroon Tradex also opens first gas station in Equatorial Guinea. That's Malabo, the capital of that country. I'll come to you, Joshua Debisi. You're the banking analyst in Capital Management. Talk us through the Zenith Bank numbers. We understand this is not the biggest bank in Nigeria.
Well, okay, so yeah, like you said, basically they blew all of our expectations out of the water, in a very strong way. I mean, 230 billion in profit after tax. It's quite impressive. My expectation was closer to about 215 billion, but I think if you look at their numbers, you see that they paid a significantly smaller final tax bill. But again, that was a very smart tactical move by them with regards to doing a lot of donations during the year for COVID relief and things like that, things that they were then able to write off as tax deductible, which really helped to boost their final PAT figure. And then they offered, they just put the cherry on top with 2.70 kobo final dividend payment to raise their full year dividend payment to about 3 naira in total, which gives them a dividend yield between 11 and 12%, which is pretty much in line with what we've come to expect from Zenith Bank. I think in terms of dividend payouts, they are the best bank because of their price. And so this dividend payout really, reiterates that. And then like you mentioned about them being the biggest bank, I mean, currently, their final assets on their balance sheet for the year was almost 8.5 trillion, which is, again, extremely impressive because they were closer to about 7.7 trillion as at 9 months. So they really added a lot of deposits and also a lot of loans. So in general, they've done very well. The CBN's policies definitely helped them out a lot because we saw about 43 billion naira in total coming just from revaluation gains, after all the devaluations we saw in 2020. So I think this is, a message about what I've really been saying for a while is that, banks that have a longer net open position in FX will always benefit whenever the CBN is forced to devalue the currency. And due to obviously the macroeconomic pressures that we've been facing, the likelihood of further devaluations remains very high. So I think it's very, very likely we'll see another repeat of that kind of performance again in 2021. So I think Zenith Bank are definitely in the strongest position to take advantage of that.
Okay, but Joshua, by the virtue of this line, this headline here that Nigeria has strongest potential for Islamic financing in sub-Saharan Africa. A part of the countries mentioned that have potentials also South Africa, Kenya, and of course Egypt. But going by this headline only, any comments to contribute or add to that by way of analysis?
Sure, sure. So with regards to Islamic financing, obviously we've seen the Nigerian government raise a couple of sukuk bonds in recent times, and they've been very well subscribed. There is definitely demand for it, and we've seen a lot of Islamic banks also, come into the market. Apart from your listed bank, which is Jaiz Bank, we've seen a couple of other smaller entities. Now the thing about it is, like I said, there's a significant amount of demand. The thing is, Nigeria is very well strategically positioned within West Africa to be able to be like the hub for Islamic financing, right? Now, the only question is how we want to approach it. Obviously, the CBN has to, perfect the framework in order to ensure that other countries are able to, tap into our market if they wanted to raise, capital through Islamic finance. Now, with regards to us growing that market, like I said, the demand is already there. It's now about structuring the projects that they are going to finance with these Islamic bonds or with any kind of Islamic financing in general, in order to ensure that you get decent returns and that people are always happy to come back and subscribe for more. Now, I think, like I said, Nigeria is perfectly positioned. If you think about Benin, Niger and Chad to the north, you think that all these countries are full of people who are more than happy to tap into this market, and I think definitely we'll see a lot more of that in the years to come. Now it's just about the strategic positioning that the CBN wants to embark on, because all of it is down to regulation. If the regulatory framework is favorable, we will see a lot of demand, we will see a lot of supply. But if it is not favorable and if it is not straightforward, then it will just kill the market. That's just the truth.
Thank you so very much. Boston, I know that sometimes last year, the Central Bank of Nigeria released a guideline around Islamic financing and non-interest banking in Nigeria. I can't remember what it actually targets specifically, but we also know that the federal government, fiscal authorities in recent time has also been floating so much of sukuk, as Joshua hinted earlier. But a lot of the subscribers come from the south, especially in the eastern part of Nigeria. Yes, Bosa.
Yes, Islamic finance is making. Yes, Islamic finance is making a whole lot of more inroads than is being captured. Suno Assurance is doing a whole lot more in Islamic insurance. It's coming up very well. The other countries also mentioned, I'm sure, in Egypt and others, who are also making very giant some strides there. This administration has raised so much, as Joshua said, in terms of sukuk bonds so far, but again, time to completion of projects and what have you is a different conversation entirely. But that's where the good news is, that Islamic finance is making very big inroads on the continent. I'm sure Ali has his eyes on other regions like Morocco, Egypt as well, that are also digging in terms of sukuk Islamic financial products.
So I'll save Ali's comment to the Northern African headlines, where he'll be able to talk us through that of Egypt and of course Morocco, as you mentioned, to give us a global perspective eventually. But let's look at the Southern African space now, where let's say South Africa's unemployment rate rises to 32.5% from 30.8% in the third quarter of 2020. Sibanye Stillwater ventures into battery metal sector after acquiring one Finnish company. SA's Imperial Logistics plans Europe exits to focus on Africa. And of course, a couple of other corporate stories, Kumba Iron Ore and Lukara Diamond. I'll come to you quickly, Ali, with these headlines from South Africa.
Yes, the first thing obviously of note is the South African unemployment number, which is, I believe, the highest rate of unemployment since records began. And this remains, frankly, the biggest challenge facing the South African government, which is really about creating more employment for its people, because it leaves the country with significant social unrest risks. Obviously we've come off the back of a very tough year. I was looking at the composition of GDP, hospitality, tourism. These suffered terribly. It wasn't an easy year, but everyone will be looking keenly for what Tito's got to say and how he's looking to engender and be a catalyst for the economy to recover and create more jobs. Interesting, Sibanye Stillwater battery metal sector. This is a really hot sector. It's all about energy storage. It'll be interesting, to look deeper into what they think this Nordic acquisition is giving them, whether it's giving them a leading edge in battery technology. I'll be very keen to see. Imperial Logistics exiting Europe, looking at the African opportunity, wanting to put their balance sheet to work at home. That's a positive thing. There is a significant logistics and warehouse opportunity on the continent, and I don't believe anyone has truly captured it yet. And if we're really going to have e-commerce take off, we're going to see significant investments in this sector. And I think it's a little bit of what I would call a top sector for the next 10 years. What we do, however, need is better location tracking, because at the moment, we're not like the Western world where you can practically pinpoint your address. But I expect, with the advent of Uber and others, we're increasingly seeing better visibility in that space. Finally, if I can just speak about Lukara Diamond, revenues down in 2020. As we know, the 3 quarters of the year, we saw suppressed diamond demand. We then saw a bounce back in the 4th quarter. And looking forward, given what's going on in the commodity markets, and people are talking about significant pent-up demand because consumers have been locked down in the Western economies. And I think, interestingly, that pent-up demand is not skewed across the board. It's skewed in the middle class and upper middle class. And these are the people who are going to buy diamonds. So I think, it might be an interesting play. If you're playing that rebound, pent-up recovery trade, then, you could look at the diamond business as well.
Thank you very much, Ali. Joshua, we haven't seen Nigeria's unemployment data, but do you have any expectations?
Well, I mean, the expectations are not positive, but the truth is, I think, okay, what I've always said is the federal government itself cannot solve every problem, but what they can do is create an environment where, jobs can be created, obviously, an enabling environment. Now, have we seen any of that? I mean, even in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, I wouldn't categorically say yes.
Yeah, but they've done a whole lot of social investments. They've done a whole lot in the area of youth funding, and of course, some of those programs actually speak enough for the unemployment rates to reduce unemployment within this COVID-19 pandemic.
The thing is, I'm not sure about the efficacy or the effectiveness of these, as you put them, programs, because of the fact that it's not funding that is, the primary issue. Doing things like giving out trader money or, giving out grants for businesses and for startup ideas is all good and fine. But the truth is, it's one thing to give somebody money to say, okay, you can go and expand your business. It's another thing for that person to not even need the money due to the fact that they're able to get financing from banks, one, or even just have an enabling environment to operate properly. Because all those businesses that are being funded, what happens when they need to sell products, or maybe they want to export? Imagine your sesame seed sellers who struggle to get their products just from the farms down to the ports to be exported. By the time they get there, up to 70% of it has been is condemned. Then, at what point the money that the government has given them to maybe expand their operations has already been sunk into, just harvesting that crop and then not being able to transport it on time. So all these things don't really allow for. I don't think that giving out money is enough. That's my main issue.
All right, then thank you so much, Josh. I mean, we can only wait for the data to come in and then see how we can juxtapose that with that of South Africa. Also, you got the Northern African headlines here. Let's look at them quickly. We'll come back to the Moody story, which says Egypt, Morocco, Sudan, South Africa, Nigeria to lead growth in Islamic banking. Then you have the Bank al Maghrib and Morocco, that is now looking to investigate merits of central bank run cryptocurrency, some kind of a virtual asset. And the Bank of Al Maghrib in Morocco is actually the central bank. You have a couple of other headlines there. Give us a sense of your editorial judgment of these headlines quickly before I go to Ali.
I think I'll quickly touch on within a few seconds on what Joshua said about Nigeria and unemployment. Look, you can't keep throwing money at everything. Whatever you throw money at Nigeria hardly ends well. We all know that, historically speaking. We've been throwing money around since the first oil boom of 1973, just after the Civil War, with the exception of the money thrown at building bridges and a few things like that by the administration back then. The rest of the money that we threw at the civil servants, which we call Udoji Awards, never ends well. It brought up inflation after and all of that. So we all know that. Don't keep throwing money at everything. Make the environment very conducive. If you distribute 5,000, 10,000 naira, and you expect that same individual or market woman to spend that 10,000 in an inflationary environment of 20% of food inflation, what benefits is the 5,000 and 10,000 naira if inflation is at 20%? I mean, food inflation, for example. If you talk about transportation costs, you talk about electricity, crazy bills, and what have you, the roads and logistics are about to use that 10,000 to bring in goods to the market. So the 10,000 is free money, looks like good on the front desk, on the front page newspaper, the next headlines. But again, this one has to travel all the way down to the hinterlands to bring in these same products to Lagos. And here on the road, you have various multiple illegal checkpoints, legal and illegal, taking that 10,000 naira out of her pocket. What really benefit have you done? It's sub-zero. So it's a zero-sum game. Nobody wins. So, but again, I like the cryptocurrency story from the Bank of Maghreb. I think it's the way we should be thinking of whether to issue their own digital currency so that they can control some of the issues being discussed. By the way, Elon Musk has lost about 50 billion because he tweeted about the Bitcoin and what have you. So he's no longer the richest man on planet Earth.
Also, you have to do a special on cryptocurrencies. We'll come back to you with that. Ali, let me get thoughts. I mean, we've actually run out of time. This was a final thoughts with these headlines on Northern Africa.
Just quickly talk about the fact, look, there's a ton of liquidity in the Middle East and the GCC, and there's a ton of demand coming out of Egypt, Morocco, Sudan, South Africa, Nigeria. And I really think we've been way too slow on the draw. We keep talking about this, but really we have not tapped into that pool of liquidity effectively. And I urge our policymakers, get on with it, for goodness sake.
Thank you very much, Ali Kansachu of Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for your very rich analysis on all of these wonderful headlines this morning. It's also of our executive editor Frontier Africa reports. Appreciate your insights as well. Joshua DBC, thanks for your analysis. He's the banking analyst at Vista Capital Management. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program this morning. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate everything and your contribution. I'm Temple Ashaji. This has been Frontier Opening Bell for today. See you next time. Bye for now.